It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
Phone number remains the same, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Gary and Eric, they return next Sunday night, Monday morning. Hope you're doing well and appreciate you listening to Red Eye Radio. You can follow me on the socials at Dan Mandis Show, and I host a morning show in Nashville on Super Talk 89.7 WTN, a proud Red Eye Radio affiliate. So I know that a lot of folks probably not surprised. We talked a little bit about this last night. The father of the kid that has been arrested for the shooting of that school in Georgia, the father of the kid has now been arrested as well. We've got some audio here for you, and then we're going to get into some of the details of what happened.
GBI has arrested Colin Gray, age 54, in connection to the shooting here at Appalachia High School.
Yep.
Colin is Colt Gray's father that was arrested yesterday.
Yeah, and again, I knew this was coming. I talked about this last night. The father of the kid arrested for the shooting has now also been arrested. Not sure if you saw, but over the last 24 hours, this kid's family, what an absolute mess this kid has been growing up in. Now, just so you know, that I'm not excusing anything that he did, because we've all got our stuff. Almost every single American, every single person listening to me right now grew up with some sort of stuff. Some people's stuff is worse than others, but this kid apparently just growing up in a big-time family mess. And what happened, and again, we spoke about this last night, is through a bunch of Facebook posts from the kid's aunt, it's just, there's a lot of nastiness in this house. They talk about drugs. They speak about, different forms of abuse, just really nasty, as the family was sort of striking out on social media, defending themselves, blaming each other, and so forth. And just a lot of drama. Serious dysfunction is going on in this family. People talking about the very dysfunctional family that this kid, Colt Gray, was and is growing up in. Now, the father, again, has been arrested. We're going to talk a little bit about why, and again, it doesn't really surprise me.
He is charged with the following: 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children. These charges stem from Mr. Gray knowingly allowing his son, Colt, to possess a weapon.
14 years old. So what the dad allegedly did was he purchased the weapon as a Christmas present for his son just months after they received that initial visit from the FBI. Now, remember, we spoke about this. The FBI last year visited the house of Colt Gray, and they spoke with not only Colt, but also Colt's father, the one who has now been arrested as well. And the father said, because the FBI comes and they investigate Colt, and apparently he had made, and I'm going to get into this a little bit, but he had made some threats online about attacking a high school. And so the FBI, they go through the tracing of the emails and all that kind of stuff. They visit Colt, they visit the father, they talk about the suspicions and the accusations, and the father said, okay, he doesn't have access to any guns. It's not a problem whatsoever. After the FBI leaves, the father apparently bought that gun as a Christmas present to his son, knowing that there were concerns. Now, the FBI says, and we went through some of this, the FBI says they did not drop the ball on this because they said that there simply wasn't any evidence to make any arrests. They had received those anonymous tips that Colt Gray had threatened violence against schools. And again, it turns out those threats were made on a Discord account. That account linked to an email address of Colt Gray's. The Discord account, by the way, had a username written in Russian, and the translation of the letters spelled out the name Lanza, referencing, of course, Adam Lanza, the perpetrator of the Sandy Hook elementary school tragedy, officials said. Gray denied that he was the author of the threats, telling police that he had actually shut down that Discord account after being repeatedly hacked. He expressed concerns that someone would make those accusations about him. Now, the father, Colin, reportedly assured officers that he would be mad as hell if he learned the allegations against his son making those kind of threats were true, and that all the guns would go away. Again, that is the quote. The father saying that he would be mad as hell if he learned the allegations about his son making those threats were true, and he did promise the FBI that all the guns would go away. As it turns out, he actually allegedly bought his son that gun that apparently was used in the shooting. Ultimately, the FBI says that they did not have any evidence really to charge Colt Gray with any crimes. But it's crazy. And so now I do understand, and again, I predicted this last night, but I do understand why it is now that the FBI and the local authorities there anyway have now arrested the father in this case. One of the other things that's going on, and I found this interesting, is what the media is doing with this, because it never fails, right? The media always does whatever they can to demonize two aspects of these kinds of these kinds of crimes. They demonize Republicans and they demonize guns. And that's what they're doing right now. And they're trying to impact an election. Now, everybody knows, everybody that's listening to me right now knows that Republicans and conservatives, we favor the Second Amendment. We protect the Second Amendment. We cherish the Second Amendment. J.D. Vance said something, I think it was either earlier today or yesterday, where he was talking about what is going on here in America with these kinds of crimes and these kinds of school shootings. Now, I want you to listen to this quote from J.D. Vance, and then I'm going to tell you how the Associated Press framed it to attack J.D. Vance and zooming out also Donald Trump. Listen to what J.D. Vance said.
I don't like this. I don't like to admit this. I don't like that this is a fact of life. But if you are a psycho and you want to make headlines, you realize that our schools are soft targets. And we have got to bolster security at our schools so that a person who walks through the front door We've got to bolster security so that if a psycho wants to walk through the front door and kill a bunch of children, they're not able to.
All right, so somebody tell me where he's wrong. The Associated Press had this headline. J.D. Vance says school shootings are a, quote, fact of life and calls for better security. In other words, they're trying to make it sound like he's just sort of throwing up his hands and he just doesn't care, and he's saying, well, you know what? It's just a fact of life. When in reality, put into the full context, and you just heard it, he said, I hate to admit that this is true, and I hate this for America.
I don't like this. I don't like to admit this. I don't like that this is a fact of life. But if you are a psycho and you want to make headlines, you realize that our schools are soft targets.
I mean, two completely different contexts, right? But he is correct in both cases. Now, the Associated Press, they took down that headline, that completely out of context headline, accusing J.D. Vance, accusing the Trump campaign of saying that school shootings are simply a fact of life and oh well. And so they did take that down. But this is what they do. Isn't this what the media does? Every time there's one of these shootings, what do? They call for gun control. They attack those who are pro-Second Amendment. And in this case, they're making J.D. Vance and also Donald Trump by extension into cold-hearted whatevers. So it was a misleading headline. And the Associated Press, eventually they realized, we're getting called out on social media, and they did take it down. But, putting all of that aside, taking the full context of what J.D. Vance had to say into the conversation, you know what? He's right. Sadly, tragically, horrifyingly, school shootings are a fact of life here in America for all the reasons that we have spoken about here in the last couple of days. Here in America, we have a mental health crisis. Here in America, we give kids and adults these psychotropic drugs far too much, far too generously. There is a lack of parenting. We all know about how dysfunctional social media is as well. Go down the line of bullying as well. All of these are legitimate conversations to have. And here in America, we try our best to cope with all of this. But as all of these things continue to fester in America, all the Democrats want to do, all the Democrats want to worry about, and all the Democrats want to talk about is the gun. And do you know why that is? The reason for that, at least to me, is because the Democrats see this as an easy ploy. Because it's really hard to talk about a mental health crisis. It is really hard to talk about the influx of psychotropic drugs. It is really difficult to talk about the lack of parenting in society today. It's hard to talk about all of those, especially when it is so easy to very simply put up a picture of a scary-looking gun and say the gun is bad. When in reality, we have a proliferation of bad people in our country. And some of these bad people use the gun as an instrument for their evil ways. And as we've talked about many times, it's good people with that same instrument that can take down those bad people with those guns, which is exactly what happened yesterday in Georgia, where the SRO, as you know, if you listened to Red Eye Radio last night, the SRO in Georgia, armed, encountered and confronted that kid, and he immediately put down his weapon. And that tells you that good guys with guns works as a deterrent. Guy called up last night. I don't know if you heard it. Guy called up last night here. If you missed it, you can check the podcast. I think it was in the third or fourth hour. Guy called up, and he was obviously a liberal, obviously hated Donald Trump. And he said, how is Donald Trump going to stop gun violence in America? And I talked about all the things that I speak about on my local show in Nashville, Tennessee on WTN. I'm the morning host. I said that Donald Trump would support stronger sentencing of criminals. He would support fortifying schools. He would support armed security. A better Trump economy would allow parents to spend more time parenting and less time working, because that better Trump economy means that your dollars, your paycheck, your money is worth more. And that means that you don't have to work as hard for the things that you need to buy. And that does leave more time for parenting and focusing on your kids. We spoke yesterday about fatherless households and how people all across America, kids all across America, primarily in some of these rougher neighborhoods, they don't have fathers. And so they don't have fathers there to tell them that they need to be responsible. They need to understand how to interact and deal with the police, keep them out of gangs as well. We could have all of those conversations. And Donald Trump would be more supportive. I don't know if I spoke about this yesterday. Donald Trump would be more supportive of the Second Amendment, far more supportive of the Second Amendment than Kamala Harris would. He would be far more supportive of gun rights here in America to allow people to defend themselves. And when Americans are able to defend themselves, then the bad guys realize, just like we saw in Georgia yesterday, the bad guys understand that, and they are less inclined to go after innocent Americans. That's why so many people across America have signs on their lawn that say, "This house guarded by Smith & Wesson." So to me, those are all ways that Donald Trump would be able to reduce gun violence in America. So I do believe, and I know that the hate listeners are listening right now. I know that you're listening and you're scoffing at all of this. Well, prepare to scoff some more. Hey, listeners, I will also say that, yes, I am one of those nuts that will say that the answer to gun violence in America is more guns in the hands of more law enforcement, in the hands of Americans who want to protect themselves and their homes as well. And yes, for SROs in schools as well. I do. I think that all of those are the answer to gun violence here in America. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Did you know that up to half of all major engine failures are due to poor cooling system maintenance? That's a lot of downtime and can cost drivers big. You expect a lot from your engine, which is why the cooling system must be a part of your maintenance routine. Here's a tip to keep your cooling system in shape and your engine running smooth. Have the system properly flushed whenever the coolant is changed. Over time, contaminants from seals, oil, and fuel are released into the system and must be removed. And remember, flushing the system with the right coolant mix and water dilution is crucial. If you have coolant questions or need an expert to help flush your system, have your cooling system inspected by a professional technician.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
$866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Colt Gray's chilling 3 words to investigators revealed after the Georgia high school massacre yesterday. This is from the Daily Mail. Colt Gray has admitted, "I did it," to investigators despite being read his Miranda rights after he was arrested for shooting dead 4 people at his Georgia high school. He was arrested, of course, as you folks know, on Wednesday at Appalachia High School. There are minutes after authorities say he opened fire on students and teachers. They say that they read him his Miranda rights, and he was still talking even after he was read his rights by authorities, according to CNN. And as I just reported in the previous segment, Gray's father, Colin, 54, has been taken into custody by local authorities and charged with 2 counts of murder, 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, and 8 counts of cruelty to children after he apparently bought his son a gun after the FBI visited the home. And the father said, you know what, I'm going to put up all the guns. I'm going to make sure that the guns are gone and he will not have access to guns. And then stunningly and astonishingly, he went out and bought his son a gun for Christmas. And people, as you can imagine, I mean, I was aghast when I saw that when I woke up this evening. And I'm just simply put, I'm not surprised. This is Robert calling from Arkansas on Red Eye Radio. Robert, how are you?
Hey, Dan. Sorry the guys aren't there, but I'm doing okay. And you have revealed to me some facts that I didn't know. I didn't know Daddy bought him the gun after they had been questioned. But in Quitman, Arkansas, there is a school, and they spent a lot of money so that the teachers could hit a button, and it would actually lower shields that are military grade. So it will stop bullets, and it also acts as a tornado shelter.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, in a little town in Arkansas.
Well, and I love that. And, Robert, I got to run. The music waits for no one. The breaks wait for no one. But I think that's a great idea. Listen, we're not always going to be able to stop the school shooters. We need to fortify our schools and protect our kids. That's what we really do need to do.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Appreciate you listening. The ongoing saga, I have found this fascinating. The ongoing saga of whether or not this Venezuelan gang has taken over this apartment complex in Colorado, in Aurora, Colorado, has really been interesting to watch because, you know, I've spoken to people in Colorado, a couple of different people, and they swear up and down, this is going on. A couple of days ago, I played you the audio of that woman from the Aurora City Council who has been trying to deal with this situation. You have people on the left who are saying, this isn't really happening. This is just a bunch of malarkey. That's what this is. This is a bunch of right-wing Republicans trying to politicize illegal immigration. That's what this is. No. I have been saying all along, I believe that it has happened. Now, I'm not there in Aurora. I used to live in Aurora, but it all checks out, doesn't it? You had local residents that were saying that these gang members, they had taken over the apartment complex, and then suddenly, as it was really beginning to take hold in the media, then all of a sudden they said, oh, no, this really isn't happening. No, it's not happening. And I said on day one, I can damn near guarantee you that these gang members have taken over this apartment complex because this is what happens in Venezuela. This is what happens when bad people are allowed to take over. Because then the good people are victimized. And it is just like the left to say, oh, no, this isn't really happening. No. The border's actually closed. Don't believe your own eyes. Don't believe the images. Don't believe the drone footage of these thousands and millions of illegal aliens coming across our southern border. Don't believe that. You just believe us. Trust us. Well, now there's been an independent investigation. You'll love this. There's been an independent investigation that has been done in Colorado, in Aurora. What I want you to do is find me on X at Dan Mandis Show, and you can see the video. I've got the audio, but you can see the video. What they did was they hired a law firm to go in and check out some of these apartment complexes because you have people on the left saying that this is not happening. You have people that are just living in these apartment complexes, and people who are in this area that will say that absolutely this Venezuelan gang that specializes in drugs and murder and mayhem and human trafficking and prostitution and all of these other things have taken over these various apartment complexes in Colorado. This is from CBS in Denver.
With the investigators saying the evidence we have reviewed indicates that gang members are engaging in flagrant trespass violations, assaults and battery, human trafficking, sexual abuse of minors, unlawful firearms possession, extortion, and other criminal activities. The law firm says this is a picture of gang members breaking into a vacant apartment so they could move a Venezuelan family in and then collect rent.
Wait, I'm so confused. I thought that wasn't happening. I thought the politicians on the left in Colorado and all across America that are Democrats or whatever you want to call them, progressives, liberals, they were saying, no, this is just the Republicans trying to politicize illegal immigration. By the way, if you go to my X feed and you watch this video, I think it's first or second up from the top, you'll see that as they open the doors to these apartments, they are trashed. There's trash everywhere. There's food that's strewn out all over the place. I believe there's feces on the walls. And there is just junk literally everywhere, and it is disgusting.
Guys, this is the room. Hello? All right, so we knocked. This is the room that's essentially been vacated now. and it's an absolute disaster in here. Just a hot mess. Trash everywhere, food. All the rooms are destroyed. Doors busted out. Spray paint. Not quite sure what this is. We've pretty much talked to every single resident here, knocked on all the doors at this apartment complex, but the moment we bring up Tren de Aragua, they stop talking.
See, that's what I said. I said that the other day. I said, listen, you've got the authorities that are, supposedly, knocking on the door and asking, hey, is this gang Tren de Aragua, are they taking over this complex? Oh, no, senor. No, they're not taking over the complex. They are terrified. And you just heard the reporter there say that once you bring up Tren de Aragua, they clam up because they know that they're in danger because, snitches get stitches. The headline from this story, Colorado law firm report claims Venezuelan gang has a stranglehold on these apartments and the takeover began in 2023. Now, earlier in the week, I think it was actually last week, there was that video as well where you had these gang members with, they've got pistols, they've got handguns, they've got long rifles as well, and they're walking up and down the apartment complex stairs in the corridor. Oh, but there's nothing to see here. You're just trying to politicize illegal immigration to make it look as bad as possible to hurt Kamala Harris. Yeah, that's what we're doing. A Denver law firm hired to look into an alleged gang takeover of that Aurora apartment building says they found the Venezuelan gang began taking over the Whispering Pines apartments in late 2023. Since then, the gang has engaged in violent assaults, threats of murder, extortion, strong-arm tactics, and child prostitution, as they have extended a stranglehold on the Aurora apartment complex, again, for the last year or so. That is according to a letter sent to Aurora Mayor Mike Hoffman, Aurora City Manager Jason Batchelor, and the interim police chief that was obtained by CBS News Colorado. Each page of the 9-page report was labeled confidential treatment requested. And then, of course, it was leaked to the media. The Perkins Coie law firm shared its findings on August 9th with Aurora's top administrators. They say the evidence we have reviewed indicates that gang members are engaging in flagrant trespass violations. You just heard it, assaults and battery, human trafficking, sexual abuse of minors, and so on and so forth. That was written by T. Marcus Funk, a former U.S. attorney. They say that Funk is not responding to emails and phone calls from CBS News Colorado, and a second associate at the law firm also did not respond to inquiries from CBS News Colorado. The firm says it represents the lender for Whispering Pines Apartments, 1357 Helena Street, one of several apartment buildings allegedly controlled by the Tren de Aragua gang. The law firm says it interviewed witnesses and reviewed video from the Whispering Pines for its investigation. I think, part of what frustrates me as just a guy that's been talking about illegal immigration for years is that the Democrats have been gaslighting the American people since the term gaslighting really was in the American vernacular. They have. They have been denying the impacts of illegal immigration for years. But then when Joe Biden comes in, he comes in and you folks know what he did on day one. Remain in Mexico policy, gone. Any conversation about the wall continuing to be built, gone. He was actually saying he was going to tear down some parts of the wall. Joe Biden, when he was in the middle of the primary debates, he said, you know what? If you want to come in here and you want to claim amnesty, please come to America. And they certainly did, including this gang and other gangs as well, by the way. So they have been gaslighting Americans for years. And now the question is, okay, well then what are you going to do about it? Investigators interviewed, and when I say you, I mean you listening. I mean the American people. Yesterday, we're talking off the air. We had dozens of what we like to call hate callers. Or I call them hate callers. You know, some of these progressives, some of these liberals that will call up and they'll just start spewing their venom. I spoke to a couple last night and the day before. And part of my questioning to those progressives is, what do you say to this? You cannot deny the impact of Joe Biden's immigration policies or lack of policies. You simply can't. So you can sit here and you can spew your venom and you can sit here and spew your lies about how Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Do you know what is a threat to democracy? This. Investigators interviewed the property manager who had 15 years of experience in the industry. The property manager said that he has never seen anything remotely like the trendy Aragua takeover of Whispering Pines in his entire career. Whispering Pines consists of 54 apartments with rent ranging from $1,450 to $2,000 per month, according to the report. Tenants are generally working-class Hispanic families with children. And the property manager told the law firm that he started his job in January of 2024, but that Tren de Aragua had already been establishing a presence at the apartment before his employment. In November of 2023, the report states a consultant for the property management company was so severely beaten and stomped by gang members that he had to go to the hospital. The report says the beating was unprovoked. I mean, this is scary. And you know what's even more horrifying than that? Is that the left, the liberals, the progressives, and Chuck Schumer just don't care.
The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are here.
Well, it's actually closer to 20, Chuck. And you'll notice what he does. He talks about them as if, they're all just, coming in here wanting to find the American dream and all of these other things. The reality is that some of these folks are murderers. Some of these folks, like the Tren de Aragua gang, are partaking in child trafficking and prostitution and murder, assault, battery. And it's interesting because they never really talk about that. They only talk about wanting to legalize these folks, grant them amnesty so that eventually they can vote.
The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many.
So can somebody please find Chuck Schumer? Can somebody please find Chuck Schumer and say that when you say the dreamers and, all of them, do you mean Tren de Aragua? Or MS-13? Another rampant gang that is known for beheading their victims? I think MS-13, if I remember right, they're from El Salvador. And so it's almost like, can somebody please ask Kamala Harris, what will you do about Tren de Aragua? What will you do about MS-13? Will you treat them like ISIS? Which is exactly what Donald Trump has said that he would do in dealing with just this kind of problem. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. And that's in for Eric and Gary. They return next Sunday night, Monday morning, and looking forward to their return. There's a lot of stories in the news today about some comments that Donald Trump made here in the last couple of days about rescuing the economy and home ownership by cutting regulations, by deregulating. And it's a really interesting story. I want you to keep listening. And the phone number, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Got some election news coming up next on Red Eye Radio.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339, in for Gary and Eric indeed, and they will be back Sunday night, Monday morning. There is no doubt that, at least for a lot of folks, maybe you, the American dream is dead. And I'm not going to go through, the very tired monologue that we've all been hearing for the past couple of years on the American dream dying, but let's face it. If the American dream is buying a home, having a steady job, being able to afford stuff, having kids and, growing up and happily ever after, I don't know if that American dream exists anymore. I mean, certainly it doesn't under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And when you look at the state of our nation today, when you look at the state of the American family these days, and young couples, you can't afford to have kids. You can't afford to buy a house. You don't know what's going to happen with the economy, but everything is just so expensive, and your life is completely put on hold because everything is so expensive. That for a lot of people, the American dream is dead. And so Kamala Harris, her big idea to save the American dream was to give some Americans $25,000 for a down payment on a home. Now, a couple of things. As I said at the time, okay, so you mean to tell me that, for example, you've got, a young couple, maybe 21, 22 years old, and they're white, and they make, maybe $31,000, $32,000, $33,000 a year each. And they're just above that line. They're just above it. But they can't afford to buy a home. Maybe this is your son or your daughter. Maybe this is you. And they just can't afford to buy a home. But they don't qualify for Kamala's great $25,000 assistance with the down payment of a home. Or whatever it ultimately would end up being. The point is, those people are now having their tax dollars taken from them so that other people, including no doubt illegal aliens, so that they can afford to buy a home, so that they can get the assistance. And so when you talk about the American dream dying, I think there's a number of things going on. Yeah, very few people these days can afford to buy a home. The American city is literally dying on the vine. You look at cities like Philadelphia. You look at cities like, Phoenix, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C. Those cities are dying along with the American dream. Now, for a lot of people, and I think this is really true, I think for a lot of the people across America, I think that they are just beginning to wake up. I do. I think they're just beginning to wake up, to realize that the government is not on your side. By and large, the government with Democrats in charge, with Joe Biden or Kamala Harris in charge, they are not on your side. They'll lie to you. They'll obfuscate the truth. They'll tell you things that simply are not true. They'll tell you things that you know are not true, but they'll insist that it is because they have no interest in garnering your respect. They only want your fear. And so I think for a lot of people here in America, I'm not one of them, by the way, because I don't trust the government. I never have. But I think for a lot of people in America, the last 3.5 years, it really has been an eye-opener. And there's a lot of people who probably had this thought that, oh, the government is looking out for us. The government is here to take care of the American people. And I think for a lot of folks who have now been red-pilled, if you don't know what red-pilling is, look it up. It's basically you have become now aware of the truth. Part of the death of the American dream is realizing, a lot of people, again, not me, but a lot of people realizing the government is not on your side. I could spend the entire broadcast today with example after example after example of how the government is not looking out for your best interests. But here's one.
The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are here.
Now, that is Chuck Schumer. I ended the last hour with that audio bite, and I was using that to talk a little bit about the gangs that have come into America. But part of the American dream is free and fair elections. And you know and I know that one of the reasons why Chuck Schumer and the Democrats, they're so anxious to bring in all of these illegal aliens, all of them, as Chuck Schumer says, all 20, 21, 22 million that Joe Biden has let into our country. They want to give them amnesty. They want to give them citizenship. And they want them to vote. And that is a voting bloc that is going to be beholden to the Democrat Party. And that puts Republicans clearly, obviously, at a massive disadvantage. And so the problems with the American dream, and part of the American dream is, of course, in America, we have free and fair elections. Well, that part of the American dream will be gone because of all of the illegal aliens that are going to be given the opportunity to vote, not to mention they're going to be given representation in Democrat-run cities so that you now have more representation in Congress, in the House of Representatives, because that's based in population. So you have thousands of new illegal aliens that come into a particular city. Well, now guess what? They get more representation in the House of Representatives. And if it's going to be a blue city, they're going to be a bunch of Democrats. And so I could just go through example after example after example of the American dream dying. And my heart breaks for my daughter. My heart breaks for my eventual grandkids. And I know that if you're a person of a certain age and you've got kids that are adults or you've got kids that are getting ready to have children of their own, you know what this world is coming to. And you know what the problem that we have in this country is that if Kamala Harris wins the election, if Kamala Harris becomes president of the United States, that if you dare speak out about the things that you're seeing, the things that you're experiencing, the things that you are worried about, then she is going to send the Department of Justice after you.
the Department of Justice of the United States back in the business of justice. We will double the Civil Rights Division and direct law enforcement to counter this extremism. We will hold social media platforms accountable for the hate infiltrating their platforms because they have a responsibility to help fight against this threat to our democracy. And if you profit off of hate, if you act as a megaphone for misinformation or cyber warfare, if you don't police your platforms, we are going to hold you accountable as a community.
So, in other words, part of the American dream is our Constitution and the rights that are afforded us under the Constitution. The right to free speech, the right to freedom of expression, gone under Kamala Harris. And so you just heard the audio bite where she's saying that if you dare come out and you speak your truth or the truth and you speak your mind and they don't agree with what you're saying, they're going to deem you a purveyor of disinformation or misinformation, and they're going to come after you and they're going to get you canceled. You're going to get fired. You're going to lose your right to free speech. You're going to lose your ability to be on social media, even if you're not wrong. And you see, that's the thing that's so horrifying. There's a number of things that are horrifying here. Number one is oftentimes those voices that are called misinformation, those voices that are called disinformation, oftentimes those people are right before their time. And here's what I mean by that. You know how some people, they'll say, well, they were before their time. There's some people who are right before anybody else is willing to accept the fact that they are right. I mean, I've often said that conspiracy theorists, they're just people that see the truth before a lot of other folks. But here's why this is so horrifying. Here's why this is so worrisome when Kamala Harris says that she's going to utilize the Department of Justice to go after those that are spreading misinformation or disinformation. You know what that actually means? That actually means that, for example, if you're calling out the Harris, God help us, the Harris administration, the Harris-Walz administration for something that they're doing and they don't agree with what you're saying, they can have you shut down. If you're a talk show host, they'll go after your job. If you're somebody who is a journalist of some sort and you're reporting on things, they're going to go after your job. They're going to go after your company's advertisers. That's what she's talking about. And if that doesn't scare the hell out of you, it really should. Remember, the media itself and the Biden administration itself, they have been purveyors of misinformation and disinformation for years. Quick examples, which I seem to talk about almost daily these days in different contexts. But you had the crackdown on COVID questions, like where it came from, the negative impact of lockdowns, vaccine hesitancy, all of those things turned out to be the people that were sounding the alarm on all of those things turned out to be right. The Great Barrington Declaration. I've heard Gary and Eric talk about this. I talk about it all the time. The Great Barrington Declaration, where Dr. Anthony Fauci and his team, they destroyed the reputations of great scientists who said the lockdowns would have had negative impacts on our society. They were right. Yet Dr. Anthony Fauci destroyed their credibility and destroyed their careers, and they were obviously, as we all now know, they were proven right. But here's the problem, is that once your career is destroyed, nobody cares. You're gone. Doesn't matter if you are right. Your career is destroyed and nobody cares. Too bad, so sad. So they've already proven what they're willing to do, the lengths that they're willing to go to shut down people who are contrary to what they're trying to put forward, their agenda and their narrative. Hunter Biden's laptop, another great example, was deemed Russian disinformation, and you were spreading Russian intelligence and Russian disinformation and misinformation and all of that if you dare talk about Hunter Biden's laptop. Turned out, as you know, it was credible. Even though all of those media outlets said, no, this is Russian disinformation is what that is. You should be kicked off social media. You should have your account suppressed. You should have your freedom of speech gagged and taken away. People turned out to be right. And so the sad thing is, people who have been called racists, people that have been called conspiracy theorists, people that have been called all kinds of names, including spreaders of disinformation and misinformation, they've had their lives and their careers ruined. And Kamala Harris, she's willing to do it again. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandison for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Independents with carrier authority should be mindful that negotiation strength varies as the week progresses. Typically, the highest rates across major segments are paid for loads negotiated on Sundays, and the highest volume of loads for all segments is seen on Mondays. Also, the weekday that tends to be the best for flatbed negotiations, yielding the best rates. Owner-operators tend to have less negotiation strength on Tuesday, which shows the lowest weekday spread between brokers' offered rates and actual paid rates. Broker offers tend to rise by Wednesday as the end of the week is in sight. This day also seems optimal for the 3 o'clock hustle, so-called for its reliance on that afternoon time of day, when brokers are getting nervous, to improve negotiation strength. Stay mindful of this system to maximize your revenue. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. Dan Mandison for Gary and Eric. If you would, throw the host a bone and follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. And Kendall is in South Dakota on Red Eye Radio. Hello, Kendall. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I've been wondering for quite a long time already. I think they've turned us into a global citizen zone already. And I'm not sure we're a sovereign nation anymore. And I'm pretty sure we're all just residents. I just wish some of these politicians would just make it official. I think I might actually vote for somebody that actually said that, because at least I know they weren't lying to us.
Yeah, and there has been, Kendall, I will say this real quick. There has been so much damage over the last 3.5 years, particularly with illegal immigration, that I don't know. I mean, Trump is talking about a massive deportation. I don't know how you do that. I mean, I trust he can do it, but that's going to be very difficult. And you're right. It does feel like at times that we are not a sovereign nation. It does feel like our government is not looking out for our best interests, and they're selling American citizens. They're selling us out.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just all residents at this point. You know, just make it official. You know, as soon as their toes cross the line, they're a resident. They got as much right as any other resident. They can vote, do whatever. You know, at least they wouldn't be lying to us. I don't think there's any way you're going to deport 20 million people. I don't think the military could do it, which would be illegal anyhow under the Posse Comitatus Act. So there definitely isn't enough law enforcement to deport all the illegals. So let's just make it official. We're a global citizen zone. Come one, come all.
Well, Let's not. Thank you, though, Kendall. I appreciate the call. I get the sentiment. I really do. And basically, Kendall, we already have. I mean, that's what Joe Biden did when he was in the middle of that debate. And he said, if you want to come to America and claim amnesty, come on. And Kendall, when you say, come one, come all, well, they have. They've come from almost every single country on earth. I mean, they've come from China, got people, I believe, that have come from Russia, of course, Afghanistan. I mean, you name the America-hating country, and they have come to our country, heeding Joe Biden's beck and call.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. So I'm just kind of having some fun with this Kamala Harris quote where she says that she is going to send the Department of Justice out to people who are spreading misinformation and disinformation.
The Department of Justice of the United States back in the business of justice. We will double the Civil Rights Division and direct law enforcement to counter this extremism. We will hold social media platforms accountable for the hate infiltrating their platforms because they have a responsibility to help fight against this threat to our democracy.
So part of my question is, okay, so who is going to define what is misinformation and disinformation? I mean, in the previous segment, I went through this big, long soliloquy, and I apologize, but this big, long monologue about how there's all these folks that have been called racist and conspiracy theorists and, spreading misinformation and disinformation and extremism, when it turned out that they were right about what they were saying, whether it was Hunter's laptop that was deemed Russian disinformation or, talking about the negative impact of the COVID lockdowns and so forth. So then there was this, I was just thinking about this just during the break. So remember this.
You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time.
Since when does the vice president have what sounds like a southern accent?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Remember that? So you've got Cringe Jean-Pierre, who is clearly gaslighting America. Because the entire nation was talking about this absurdly offensive Southern accent. And many people said a black woman Southern accent. I don't know, whatever. But, I mean, clearly, it's something that the American people were talking about. And so would Cringe Jean-Pierre and a Harris administration go after Peter Doocy for asking that question about the fake accent? Because Kamala Harris and Cringe Jean-Pierre would say, oh, Peter Doocy is spreading misinformation and disinformation. We have no idea what he's talking about. When the reality is everybody in America knows what Peter Doocy was talking about. Yet they would call it misinformation or disinformation and try to get him fired, try to get the Department of Justice to go after him and call him an extremist. I mean, do you see where this goes? So when we talk about how important this election is, I mean, it is absolutely critical. Greg is in Chicago on Red Eye Radio. By the way, the phone number 866-90 Red Eye. Greg, go ahead.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm good. Go ahead, sir.
I thought it was kind of interesting that a couple callers basically said this is the way it's going to be, and if this is the way it's going to be, we should just kind of accept it. I find this situation that we're in now in November is critical, as you point out, if not more. And I believe that the trial runs have already been established, whether it be through the use of COVID to crack down on families, control what they can and cannot do, control whether or not they can or cannot mask their kids, gauge the pushback by parents. I believe that what you see happening with some of the censorship across the world right now, some of these states cracking down on individuals, detaining them, Brazil's reaction to Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And the thing that kind of quietly disturbs me is the fact that we haven't heard much about central digital bank currencies or social credit scores, where you will be judged by government, and government will be the sole arbiter. And like you mentioned about who's going to make the determination, well, it's going to be the government. If they don't like what you say, they're going to crack down on you. How are they going to do it? They'll either do it directly through legal means, or they'll do it indirectly through control of your funds. And these are the stakes, and we have to accept something right now. Do we want to live as free, independent individuals that are guaranteed life, liberty, and justice for all? Or are we going to live under a controlled state? Call it whatever you want. We've been through these examples throughout history. Soviet Union being the most recent, a lot of these communist countries being the most recent, and not even that far back. Look at what's happening in England. Look what's happening in France. Look what's happening in old Europe, in Western Europe. It's disturbing. It's very disturbing. And what are the means that keep us constantly at each other's throats or on edge? It's the inflation issue. It's the illegal immigration issue. Did you know that America First Legal Foundation is actually suing Arizona to get their voter rolls cleaned up? It's amazing what's happening in this country, and it's all being done with our knowledge. We have access to the information, but yet nobody seems willing to speak out about it, and that's what scares me.
What's interesting, well, scares me too, Greg, and the thing that I would say to that is that we talked about this last night, and I said something, and I kind of riffed on it for a little bit, but the uninformed voter in America are going to doom us all. And what I mean by that is, Greg, you're really smart. I can tell that you're really smart. I think I'm a fairly smart guy, and most of the people that listen to Red Eye, I'm sure, are really smart and informed, and certainly Gary and Eric are. But unfortunately, we're not the majority. We are the minority. Only a minority of people really, truly pay attention to what's going on in the news. And so that's why I think that what Kamala Harris said is so incredibly chilling, because if you're somebody like me or Gary or Eric or some of the other, talk show hosts that are out there, or the television commentators out there, somebody like Mark Levin, is they can shut down the dialogue that they don't like, because they can say that something is misinformation and disinformation, even if it's not. This from the same woman that has been telling us that the border is closed for the last 3.5 years, when we know darn right well that it wasn't closed. It was wide open. That is what's so scary about this, Greg, and I appreciate the phone call. Donald Trump has taken aim at the high cost of housing, and so on Wednesday, he talked about his plans to help the American dream continue. Earlier, we were talking about the American dream and how the American dream basically right now under Harris and Biden, it's dead. And I laid out the reasons why. One of the big reasons why is because folks simply cannot afford to buy a home anymore, which used to be, that was one of the big parts of the American dream. Well, Donald Trump said this yesterday.
We will eliminate regulations that drive up housing costs with the goal of cutting the cost of a new home in half. We think we can do that. The regulations alone cost 30%. Regulation costs 30% the new home.
Yeah, 30%. Now, I didn't actually realize that, to be perfectly honest, but National Review says yes. A lot of these zoning regulations impact the cost of housing. It also impacts what can be built where. And so what Donald Trump wants to do is he wants to cut a lot of those regulations. Now, you know that the progressives, they just love their regulations. But Donald Trump, he says that he's going to do whatever he can to cut those regulations because they do impact supply and demand, right? You remove some of those zoning regulations, you can build more homes, and that will reduce the price of existing homes, at least I would think.
And we will open up portions of federal land for large-scale housing construction. These zones will be ultra-low tax and ultra-low regulation. One of the great, really small business job creation programs it will be of all time. We're going to open up our country to building homes inexpensively so young people and other people can buy homes. You can't buy them anymore.
Yeah, so right now they say that a big part of the issue is that to build these new developments and zones, it takes years to get all of the permits. That was part of a study that they did. They went around and they spoke to housing developers who said that 97% of their delays are because of government regulations and permitting issues. So if you can cut through that, then you can build a lot more homes. You build a lot more homes, then you are impacting supply and demand. And the more homes that you're able to build, theoretically, that's going to drive that price down. Donald Trump knows this. You know how Donald Trump knows this? Because unlike Kamala Harris and unlike Joe Biden, Donald Trump actually had a job. He was a developer. So he does understand that there are these regulations that are strangling our economy. Now, we all understand that some regulations are necessary, but others are burdensome. Others are dated, and others are simply not necessary. Donald Trump also said that his plan will include an agenda where there will be no allowing for illegal aliens to buy homes in these specific communities.
That's why my plan will ban mortgages for illegal aliens in California. They're passing a law where they're going to give illegal aliens money to buy a house.
Oh, yeah, they are. That's what happened in California. They expanded this particular program in California where people get $150,000. It's like a down payment help program or assistance program. And it's sitting apparently still on Governor Newsom's desk. I don't think it passed yet. But Newsom is worried that it'll have an impact on the presidential race. So he hasn't signed it yet, but I'm here to tell you, Californians are ticked. I mean, they really are. But notice the difference in plans. Donald Trump, as far as I can tell, is not going to just give folks a bunch of money like Kamala Harris wants to do. She's talking about loans and working hard to lower the cost of housing through lowering or eliminating specific regulations. That's what Donald Trump wants to do. Kamala Harris just wants to give people money. That's not a plan. That's a platitude. That's a bribe to try to get people to vote for you. By the way, they talk about these regulations. You talk about zoning restrictions. And what they do, they often prohibit housing types other than single-family homes, prohibiting apartment buildings and townhouses, manufactured housing, and light-touch density houses is what they call it. They call those accessory dwelling or duplexes, that kind of a thing. They've got all of these different lists of, I'll try to post this is actually on my X feed, but they've got all these different regulations that, again, are just killing the ability of these developers to build homes. And so to me, this is something that is very specific that the former president is acknowledging that he wants to do to try to help folks like me and you, as opposed to just platitudes, which is what Kamala Harris is trying to do. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, and Jake is in Salem, Oregon on Red Eye Radio. Jake, go ahead.
Hey, thanks a lot. You're doing great this week, by the way. I've enjoyed listening to you quite a bit.
Thank you.
Through the course of the week, so thanks for that. Okay, you were mentioning the Schumer quote in the last half hour or so, wanting to get the who knows how many million people on a road to citizenship. I would say, fine, you want to do that. Back in the day, the Europeans were allowed to immigrate to America, my parents being them back in the late 50s. And then through a quota system, Western Europeans weren't allowed to legally immigrate to America. They could get some visas. But my thing would be, all right, fine, you want to do that? Let's open it up again so that all the Euros can come back to America too. There's such a hypocrisy involved here. And they shut that down in the 70s. So I have relatives that live in Holland, and they could not come to America to immigrate, but they opened it up for third world countries.
Yeah.
And that came about roughly in the early 70s. So let's just open it up for everybody then, right?
Well, and it's interesting, and I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate the call. I've got to go to a break, but you're right. But effectively, I will say that what they have done they have opened it up to everyone simply by having our southern border wide open. Appreciate the call. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. My name is Dan Mandis. I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You can get more information on that show at 997WTN.com. You can also, if you would, I'd really appreciate it, if you could follow me on the socials, Facebook and Twitter or X, at Dan Mandis Show. Did you hear what happened in California? There was a longtime Democrat who literally says, I've had enough of this party, and she turned Republican. Details straight ahead on Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. Appreciate you listening. 866-907-3339. Gary and Eric, they return Sunday night, Monday morning. There's some very big news earlier today. Maybe you heard about it. Hunter Biden pled guilty. He pled guilty to all 9 counts of charges related to his tax evasion trial, including, by the way, 3 felonies. Now, in total, here's what it looks like. 3 felonies, 6 misdemeanors, and that could ultimately send him to prison for 17 years, along with a $1.35 million fine or fines. Now, one of the interesting things I thought is that, okay, so the election is wrapping up. I mean, obviously, it's going to be on November 5th. That's when the actual election day is. Joe Biden is getting ready to leave office in January. So what does this mean? Well, it means a number of things. Number one, I think that Hunter Biden realized that he was more than likely going to lose these charges of tax evasion. Yes, it is that bad. But number two is I'm pretty certain that he didn't want to continue to put his family, including his father, through the embarrassment of what he did. And Joe Biden often says, I know that you know this, Joe Biden often says, I should pull the soundbite, that Hunter Biden is the smartest man that he knows. And, of course, one of the first things I said when I heard Joe Biden say that is, well, you don't know a lot of people, Joe, clearly. Because Hunter Biden, and yes, I know that he had a lot of addiction issues, but he just did a lot of dumb stuff. Now, the question is, now that he has pled guilty, he's going to be sentenced in December. And so Joe Biden is going to have about a month, probably a little bit over a month, to decide whether or not he wants to parole his own son. Now, realize that Joe Biden has said often that he will not parole his son. He has said that over and over again. But he was running for president at the time. Now that he's not running for president, maybe, just maybe, that answer might change. Now, remember that this is a situation for Hunter Biden where he's going to have a lot of issues. I mean, he could literally go to prison. You've got the gun charge, that conviction earlier this year. You've got all of these charges that he has, of course, now pled guilty to. So he's got a lot of problems on his hands. He's got a lot of legal problems on his hands. This was on CBS.
Will President Biden either pardon his son on this guilty plea to these tax evasion charges and indeed the gun conviction he got earlier this year in Delaware, or will he perhaps commute both of those sentences?
That's the big question. What will Joe Biden do? Is Joe Biden, has his opinion changed now that he's no longer running for president? And it's no longer, politically convenient to say that I will not parole my son? That's what everybody wants to know. Everybody knew that Hunter Biden was guilty. Everybody knew that Hunter Biden clearly was, and I don't know if he still is, whatever. I don't care about Hunter Biden ultimately. But we knew that he was or is addicted to prostitutes, crack cocaine, and all kinds of other drugs. And he documented all of these things with photographs on the infamous Hunter Biden laptop. Now, Joe Biden, again, in the past, he has said, no, I will not be paroling my son. But again, yes, he was running for office then, but he's no longer. Now, if Kamala Harris wins, maybe, Lord help us, but she could parole Hunter Biden if she wanted to. But the bottom line is clear that Joe Biden and Jill Biden and Hunter Biden, they don't want any more of the family's dirty laundry to be aired in the media. They just don't. I think that they've had enough. They've been going through a lot. And trust me when I say, I don't feel sorry for Joe Biden. I don't feel sorry for Jill Biden. I certainly don't feel sorry for Hunter Biden. CBS analyst Tom Dupree says, this really was a reality check.
Well, I think Hunter Biden's legal team reached the maybe non-controversial conclusion that there's no way he was going to win this case, and that standing trial would basically put a spotlight on all the sordid activities that he had engaged in over the last few years, which would happen at a very politically sensitive time. Obviously, his father's no longer a candidate, but I could see how they didn't want all of these things being aired.
Yeah, now you remember the accusations against Hunter Biden, right? Where he was accused of, money laundering, making a lot of money through crooked business ventures tied to peddling his father's influence. I mean, there's a lot to it, and I don't want to regurgitate all of that. But just know that Joe Biden was, in my opinion anyway, tied to the misdeeds of Hunter Biden. But what they did was they really worked hard to thread that needle to bring these charges against Hunter Biden while leaving Joe Biden out of it. But it was all about peddling his father's influence, among many other things. And so yesterday, it was a crazy day in court because when Hunter came in, he wanted to submit what's called an Alford plea, which is basically maintaining your innocence but accepting whatever sentence the judge hands down. But there wasn't going to be that embarrassing trial. But there was a problem. The problem was that Biden's team had not actually spoken to the prosecuting attorneys. You see, when an Alford plea is submitted, there's been an arrangement made between the prosecuting attorneys and the defense attorneys. Hunter Biden, he's got his attorneys, the defense attorneys. They never spoke to the prosecuting attorneys. So they come in. They want to put in this Alford plea, and the prosecuting attorneys, they said, hell no. They pushed back on that. They pushed back on that big time. So they started jury selection because since the prosecuting attorney said no, they had to go forward with the trial. They only had one thing that they could do if they truly wanted to avoid a trial, and that was for Hunter Biden to remove that Alford plea and say that he was guilty on all charges. This is what Jonathan Turley said on Fox News.
But I have never in my career ever heard of an Alford plea being proposed without speaking to the prosecutors beforehand. That type of jump scare in the middle of the courtroom in front of a judge is not a good idea. The prosecutors have a big role in this. Now, about 17% of state cases end up in Alford pleas. About 5% of federal cases end up in Alford's or no contest pleas. So these are something that come up occasionally. But I have never, ever heard of any defense team walking in and without first telling the prosecutors. And I think that's one of the reasons there was a very fast opposition to the Alford plea from the prosecutors. They are clearly miffed, and I'm not too sure I blame them.
Yeah, the prosecutors, they've done all this work, and they're ready for their day in court. And then Hunter Biden and his attorneys, they stroll in and they say, you know, we'd rather avoid a trial, and we just want to put in for an Alford plea. Whatever it is you want to do, Judge, that's fine with us. But no, the prosecuting attorneys wanted nothing to do with that. So then Hunter and his attorneys have to regroup after the pushback. And it seems to me like there really wasn't any choice for Hunter Biden. He did have to plead guilty to these charges if he wanted to avoid a very embarrassing and very demeaning trial.
I don't see any discernible strategy at all. I mean, I'm a criminal defense attorney, and I think that they have placed Hunter Biden in the worst possible position. I mean, they could have reached a plea agreement months ago when they had something to offer. By waiting till the very last minute, they are guaranteeing that he gets very little benefit from a plea deal.
Yeah, the benefit that he does get is that there won't be a trial. That would have involved the insane amount of money that he spent on prostitutes and drugs while he did not pay taxes. Remember, Joe Biden, the smartest man he knows is Hunter Biden, who spent probably more than me or you make in an entire year on prostitutes and drugs. So the judge read all 56 pages and specifically said, do you agree that you committed every element of every crime? And Hunter Biden stood up, put his head down, and said yes. Now, what's crazy about all of this is that at first he did want that Alford plea, which is actually focused on not admitting guilt, but accepting the sentencing. Now, what Hunter Biden is doing, he is actually pleading guilty. Turley says that what that does is that puts him and his lawyers in a position of weakness.
Well, it very well could be the client driving this because it seems to have all the planning of a collapsing bridge. I mean, I just don't see why anyone would take this course of action. But I certainly don't think that a lawyer needs to have these pleas explained to him. The problem for Hunter is... Yeah, the problem for Hunter is that this whole thing now looks contrived to the judge. You just told the judge you don't think you're guilty. And so if he rejects the Alford plea, then you have to come in, if you want to avoid trial, and say, okay, I plead guilty and I accept guilt, after just yesterday saying I don't accept guilt. None of that's going to help with sentencing.
That's exactly right. So then the question is, and by the way, that sentencing is on December 16th. After the election, but before the new president takes office, just in time for his plea deals and possible sentence to be commuted by his father, Joe Biden. Now, part of this dynamic could be, because people are trying to read this into it, and I don't really know, but some people are saying that this is a clue, is an indication that the Democrats have some polling that shows that Donald Trump will actually win the election. Because remember, this trial would have gone on for a while. There was a lot of evidence. This trial would have gone on for a while. And if Hunter Biden was found guilty and Donald Trump had won the election, I don't believe that Trump would have actually pardoned Hunter Biden. So some people are saying, well, this is a clue that they know that Kamala Harris is going to lose this election. I don't know about that. But I do understand the point they're making, and it is actually that does, at least to me, make some sense. Now, Hunter Biden released a statement Thursday after he pleaded guilty to those 9 federal tax charges, saying that he did do so to spare his family from being publicly humiliated by a trial. He says, I went to trial in Delaware not realizing the anguish it would cause my family. He says, I will not put them through all of that again. Biden saying, when it became clear to me that the same prosecutors were focused not on justice, but on dehumanizing me for my actions during my addiction, there was only one path left for me. He says, I will not subject my family to more pain, more invasions of privacy, and needless embarrassment for all I have put them through over the years. I can spare them this, and so I have decided to plead guilty, says Hunter Biden. You know, one of the things as I read that, I think, okay, so he's accusing the prosecutors of trying to dehumanizing him for his actions during his addiction. No, what they're doing is they're trying to get you on tax evasion and some of these other financial related charges. That's what they're trying to do. You are the one, I would say to Hunter Biden, you are the one, sir, that dehumanized yourself with all of those prostitutes, all of those drugs, and documenting every single line of cocaine and whatever other godforsaken things that you did with those prostitutes. You are the one that dehumanized yourself. You are the one that did those things, and you are the one that put them on a computer with photographs, and you are the one that ended up leaving that computer at a computer repair store, and you never picked it up. That is all on you, Hunter Biden. Now, the question is, what will Joe Biden do? All eyes now on Joe Biden. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here. This is Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Eight 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. That is where we find Bob in Baltimore. Bob, thanks for calling in. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, good morning to you and all those listening, Dan. You've been telling us about the recent school shooting with a great deal of insight, and there's a concern that we all have on how to prevent those. But I think the best way to do that is to look at that particular incident, as bad as it was and as much of a very incident of very real concern, is to see it in the larger picture, that it's symptomatic of other things that take place. I don't think that it would have been something that would have occurred years ago. These shootings, these mass shootings, are a much more recent occurrence as they are. And what I think contributes to that is a decline in culture. Back in the 1960s, Madeleine Mary O'Hair, a woman who was an atheist, took to the Supreme Court a challenge that they were saying of prayers in public schools. So prayers were taken out of our schools, and no teacher, I think, today would have a Bible on his or her desk. And what that has resulted in among young people is they have no moral grounding, so they're whipsawed by anything that comes along. And unfortunately, in their own lives, you have these younger people who are susceptible to anxiety, depression, and suicide on a marked rate, a markedly increased rate, Dan. Beyond that, in the 1970s, we became more permissive, and our society today is, I think, very much one that is more debased and crude, vulgar, and unrestrained. And anyone who is of traditional and American values who comes out for them is mocked and derided. So you have all of these things contributing to a very loose, immoral and amoral society, and I think that the restraint and respect that I witnessed as somebody who was one preceded by the World War II generation and grew up in the 1950s, which was a very wonderful time in this country, that has all evaporated. And one other element in this, a most significant institution in our society, the church in general, is not standing up to these things. They should be taking the lead in this as the institution that alerts our people and has as its mission to keep the light of what is right before us, unlike any elected official or government agency or even a private individual or institution can do. It's their role. And to give you some insight on something that really brings that forward, you may know of it, but if not, it's a video documentary titled Letter to the American Church, and it addresses this very thing of the church as an institution, again, not one denomination or one leader, but the church in general. I would say synagogues and churches to come forward as they have the responsibility to do, to bring light to our society. You mentioned this morning, the American dream evaporating, and I think we're in very grave danger of going the way of nations that had done so in the 20th century, Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, and now Communist China. And that's what this video documentary does, Dan. It brings to light what happened in those countries, particularly Nazi Germany.
Well, what I would say, Bob, and what I would say, and I gotta run, so I'm up against a break, but you're right. The one thing, and that was great. Everything you said, absolutely spot on. The one thing you missed was parenting, because I think that with the Bible's no longer in school, the evaporation of the church, I get all that. I wholeheartedly agree. But good parenting can make up for all of that. And a lot of parents in this country have fallen by the wayside. Appreciate the call.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Really appreciated the call that we just got from Bob, where he's out there. I think it was Bob out there in Baltimore. And he's talking about all of the things that have gone wrong in our society that is leading to all of these shootings, all of these school shootings. And I agree with him wholeheartedly. I just want to make sure that everybody understood that I agreed with him on the Bible's no longer in schools, and you've got the disintegration of the church. I mean, we could go through all of the things that I've mentioned previous in this week, which was more bullying. You've got social media. I mean, all of these things. And Bob went through about a 2-minute soliloquy of all, just beautifully done, all these things that he was correct about. But he didn't mention parenting. And to me, okay, so let's just go through some of these. The Bible is no longer in schools. Now, this goes way before my time. I'm 56. I don't remember when Bibles were in school. I did go to a Christian private school. So you've got Bibles in schools. At some point, they were taken out of the schools. You're taking God out of the schools. I understand that. But realize that the absence of God and the Bibles in school can be replaced by parents inserting the Bible into the home life and talking about Christianity and talking about God and talking about what is in the Bible and using that. I don't want to get religious, but using the Bible to light your path. And I think that is really important, because that is something that parents have simply stopped doing. I mean, I don't even need to pull up the facts and figures for you. I know that that's happening, or that's not happening. That parents are simply, by and large, ignoring religion. One of the other things that's happening in our society today is the fact that you've got a lot of parents who themselves are so hyper-focused on social media that they're not paying attention to what their kids are doing on social media. We got divorce skyrocketing 1, 2, 3, 4 different marriages, and I'm one of those. I've been divorced once. I'm on marriage number 2. So oftentimes you've got parents who are divorced and they're single and they're focused on their love lives. In other words, they're not focused on what's happening with their kid, much less whether they're putting religion and the Bible and church into the equation. It's just sadly it's not happening. And then we do have the story of this Colt Gray, the one that shot up that school and he admits it now. He shot up the school in Georgia. We spent most of the show, or a lot of the show yesterday, talking about this. There's an update to that story now because the father, and I predicted this, the father of Colt Gray has also now been arrested.
The GBI has arrested Colin Gray, age 54, in connection to the shooting here at Appalachia High School. Colin is Colt Gray's father that was arrested yesterday.
Yeah, and again, I knew this was coming. Do you know what he did? I don't even know what to say about this other than, because I don't like to, kick people when they're down. But I want you to think about this, because this goes right back to parenting that I was just talking about. The FBI shows up to your house and they say your son may have posted these posts on social media where he is talking about shooting up a school. The FBI is in your living room, at your kitchen table. And you say to the FBI, you know what? I don't think it's my kid. I would really be angry if I found out this was my kid, but I'm going to get rid of the guns. I'm going to make sure the guns are locked up. I'm just going to get rid of them because I don't want that to be my kid. He bought his son a gun for Christmas. I kid you not. FBI shows up at the door. They warn him that his son may have posted these comments on social media, and the 14-year-old denied that it was him, but the father was spooked enough, at least that's what he told the FBI, that I'm going to get rid of the guns, only to then turn around and buy your son a gun for Christmas.
He is charged with the following: 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children. These charges stem from Mr. Gray knowingly allowing his son, Colt, to possess a weapon.
Yeah, the dad allegedly purchased the deadly weapon as a Christmas present to his son just months after they received that initial visit from the FBI. By the way, the FBI, just to finish the story here, the FBI says they did not drop the ball on all of this. Remember the story from last night where the FBI, it was a big story all day today, and last night where the FBI did make the visit to Colt Gray's home, and they're saying that they didn't arrest, and we talked about this last night because I try to be fair. They say that there simply wasn't enough evidence to arrest him. There just wasn't. They say that they did have these email accounts and they had the posts. The Discord account had a username written in Russian, and the translation of the letters spelled out the name Lanza, obviously referring to Adam Lanza, the perpetrator of the Sandy Hook Elementary School tragedy, officers said. But they had to really sort of trace all of these different email addresses and the Discord account to this kid, 14-year-old Colt Gray. The other thing that's going on, and by the way, Colt denies that he was the author of these threats, telling police that he had shut down his Discord account after being repeatedly hacked. He actually says that they say that he said that he expressed concerns that someone would make those accusations about him. Colin, the father in all of this, again, reportedly assured officers that he would be mad as hell. That's a quote, mad as hell, if he learned the allegations about his son making threats were true. And he did say that all of the guns would go away only for him to turn around and buy his son a gun for Christmas. By the way, it's also come out, I think I may have mentioned this yesterday. I don't remember. I had information overload yesterday. But there was a phone call into, I guess, the district where they said that there was going to be a school shooting, and there's going to be a total of 5 schools that were attacked. And this particular high school, Appalachia High School, 25 miles outside of Athens, was going to be the first one. But they didn't close the school. So that's another problem. But ultimately, the question is, and I was recounting to a friend of mine the call that I had last night where the guy, obviously one of these, hate listeners, we had to dump him not once but twice. And I tried to have a dialogue with him, but it was a complete and utter failure. But his point was, what is Donald Trump going to do to stop school shootings? And so, I went through him. If you heard the story, if you heard the call, you know what I said to him. But just to briefly recap, because a lot of it goes back to what Bob was saying out of Baltimore. I think that Donald Trump will improve the economy. And what that does, it does then lend the parents across America to spend more time parenting and less time working. That's number one. Number two, I'm one of those crackpots that believes that the answer to gun violence is more guns, meaning that people need to be able to defend themselves. That's incredibly important. Number three is I believe that Donald Trump will fortify the schools. That is also incredibly important. He'll have armed guards. He'll support armed guards and SROs in the schools as well. I mean, all of these things are critically important in protecting our kids. Now, you heard what J.D. Vance said, right? This was a little controversial. J.D. Vance, the running mate of Donald Trump, said this.
I don't like this. I don't like to admit this. I don't like that this is a fact of life. But if you are a psycho and you want to make headlines, you realize that our schools are soft targets. And we have got to bolster security at our schools so that a person who walks through the front door we've got to bolster security so that if a psycho wants to walk through the front door and kill a bunch of children, they're not able to.
All right. Now, I mean, that makes perfect sense. His words were taken out of context by the Associated Press. Their headline is, J.D. Vance says school shootings are a fact of life, as he calls for better security. Now, they're taking his words out of context. It is misleading, to say the least, because what he said, the way that they make it sound, it's like he said it rather matter-of-factly. School shootings are a fact of life. When in reality, he said,
I don't like this. I don't like to admit this. I don't like that this is a fact of life. But if you are a psycho and you want to make headlines, you realize that our schools are soft targets.
He's absolutely right. And you heard him say, I hate to admit this. I hate to say this, but it is a truth in America that our schools, by and large, are soft targets. And so the Associated Press that had that out of context misleading headline, they started to get ratioed. And so they ended up pulling it down because they knew that they were going to get caught trying to mislead the American people. And ultimately what they're trying to do, and you people are smart. I know you're smart. So I know that you know this. What they're really trying to do is go after J.D. Vance so they can really go after Donald Trump and manipulate the election that we have coming up in November. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Erica. This is Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Eight 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. You can follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. Almost everything that I talk about, there's some sort of information or video or something on my X feed. I want to say hello to Derek calling from Detroit on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Derek, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. I'm calling about the topic of school shootings. It's something that troubles me very greatly because I have children and grandchildren in public school systems in 2 different states. I believe that this is a situation that can be easily rectified if common sense were employed and deployed. Specifically, if you think about Fort Knox, or if you think about a federal courthouse, or you think about the White House, for the most part, these are places that are impervious to physical violence or physical threats to the people inside. It wouldn't be that hard to transform our schools into the type of facility where a shooter would be deterred from coming in.
Yeah.
All one needs is a metal detector and a properly trained person that's armed at that metal detector, and voila, no more school shootings. I don't know why parents don't understand that and why they don't force the schools and school boards to do something about it. If money is an issue, then fundraisers can be put into action to raise money. But there's simply no excuse at the end of the day. Our children are our most precious commodity. And when we go to work, we would like to know that when we come back to pick up our precious children, they're going to be in the same condition they were in when we dropped them off.
So, Derek, you're right on a couple of fronts. I think there's a number of issues, though. You're right about the metal detectors. There's probably something that maybe I'm missing and maybe you're missing. I don't know, because it does sound rather obvious. But remember that most schools have more than one entrance. And so part of what they're trying to do, when I say they, I mean school security experts, is when I talk about fortifying schools, it's one entrance. You can only get into the school with a one entrance. There's not multiple entrances. That's number one. And you're right. You've got to have somebody with a firearm and experience at that entrance. I guess the other question is, okay, so if there is if there's windows and you've got a high-powered firearm, you can blast your way through those windows. I mean, there's a lot that needs to happen to fortify a school. If there's more than one entrance, also don't forget that if there's a bunch of kids at lunch or recess or whatever it is, they're out in the open. So you're right about the metal detector, but I think that there's a lot more to talk about than just the metal detector. It's about all of the other societal things that we keep talking about. For me, fortifying the schools, armed SROs, and making sure that everybody's on the same page as far as what happens. Oh, and arming teachers. That's also one that I recommend.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. You can follow me on the socials at Dan Mandis Show on X. There is a story out there, political earthquake, if you will, and you folks from California. I know that you don't find earthquakes funny. But did you see what happened in California? Where you have now this member of the Democrat Party. She was a member of the state Senate. And now she's decided, her name is Gloria Romero. Now she has decided that she is going to walk away. And she's decided now that she is going to be a Republican. And people in California, the Democrats in California, are losing their ever-loving minds. Now, I find this whole thing incredibly entertaining. But here's the deal. I mean, one of the main threads that we've seen throughout this week of me filling in for Gary and Eric, they're back on Sunday, but one of the common threads is that we can't believe collectively as conservatives, those of us that are here that are conservatives. We can't believe that when you look at the issues and you look at what's happening in America today, that people would actually vote for Kamala Harris. And so Gloria Romero, a lifelong Democrat, has now decided that she is literally going to lead the party of the Democrats in her lofty position in the state Senate. I think she's the Democrat leader in the state Senate. And she's decided that she is done.
In this Capitol behind me, I served as both Senate Democratic Caucus Chair and the Senate Majority Leader. But today I say goodbye. Adios. I've had enough. I changed my voting registration today as the sun was rising to Republican, which has, under Donald Trump, become the champion of working people.
You know, I think that's true. I mean, the Democrats may scoff at that because, you know, the Democrats feel like they have owned that branding for, generations. Well, we're the party of the people, the Democrats will say. Under Donald Trump, I think that the Republican Party has now become truly the party of the American people, and the Democrats have become the party of the elite. And you know it's true. How do you know it's true? Did you see the DNC? Did you see Oprah Winfrey? Did you see all of the guest commentators coming in, the Hollywood elite coming in, giving speeches and all that? You see, it's the left that has really transitioned into the party of the elite. And Donald Trump, if you want to talk issues, we certainly can't talk issues because under Donald Trump, you had deregulation and you had the Trump tax cuts. Two things that saved the American people a lot of money. And so you can talk about that. You can talk about how the Democrat Party is the party of the elite in the sense that they really want to make sure that people go to college, right? They want our young adults to go to college. Why do they want our young adults, our kids graduating high school? Why do they want them to go to college? Because that's where the indoctrination happens. All those elite colleges where people are spending, tens and twenties and hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to these colleges, only to be indoctrinated, have their kids indoctrinated. I've told you this story before about the guy that called up my Nashville radio show many, many, many years ago. And he said, I'm paying for all of this tuition, and every semester my son comes home and he is turning more and more left. He's becoming more and more progressive. And now he's heading into a senior year, and I don't want to pay this money. Because my son literally hates everything that I stand for. And I'm paying for it. This guy said my son left and he went off to college. He was a God-fearing, Bible-reading conservative. And slowly but surely, I've noticed every time he comes home for a holiday, every time he comes home for a summer, he has changed. And not for the better. Well, that's happening in the elite colleges. So when Gloria Romero, this Democrat who has now decided that it's the Republican Party that is the party of the people and the Democrat Party is the party of the elites, she is absolutely right. How many people out there who are Republicans, you're worried about sending your kids off to one of these colleges because you know what they're going to try to do? I haven't Googled it lately, but I'd be willing to bet that there's a lot of Americans, there's a lot of American parents who are saying, you know what? I'm simply not going to spend that kind of money on that kind of an education. Maybe you send them to a trade school. I don't know. That brings up the whole conversation of whether or not college is worth the cost. But as far as Gloria Romero goes, the state senator in the state of California, a Democrat, now she's decided that she is a Republican, And she does. She credits Donald Trump.
There are so many more like me who have been disaffected Democrats, and we do not recognize this so-called party of democracy any longer. 14 million votes were simply thrown out in a primary that was already rigged from the beginning because the elites and the big party donors did not like the outcome. So we've just said enough. We're out of here.
Yeah, and she's obviously right. And I love how she calls them out and she says, wow, the so-called party of democracy. Because, Donald Trump is the one that was going to destroy democracy. But look what they did. Look what the Democrats did. They wouldn't allow anyone to run against Joe Biden during the primary, kept RFK Jr. off the ballot in all those different states. And then when he won the primary, they decided, you know what, we're done with old Joe. Kamala Harris, come on down. And they literally installed Kamala Harris, breaking democracy in the process. Yet there's still Democrats out there that will use the wholly inappropriate, lack of self-awareness line of they're the party that's going to save democracy. It really is unbelievable. And Gloria Romero, you just heard what she said. She said there's a lot more out there just like me. Remember the walk away movement? I think people are still walking away from the Democrat Party. And one of the things that's going on earlier in the broadcast, we were talking about how you've got all of these illegal aliens that are coming into the blue cities. Cities like Washington, D.C., cities like, Philadelphia, cities like New York, all these cities where Americans are leaving. They don't like living under Democrat rule because Democrat rule, let's just face it, there's not a lot of consequences. There's not a lot of cops. There's a lot of crime, and nobody's doing anything about it. The homes are really expensive, and the schools almost always suck. And so Gloria Romero, she understands that. I mean, God, I don't know what district she's in, but look at San Francisco, a prime example of the problems of California in California cities and Democrat-run cities as well. And she goes on and she spoke about the history of Kamala Harris in the state of California.
So the absence of school choice, education freedom, open borders, crime rampant, a mockery of citizenship itself. There are many reasons that Democrats have been saying ya basta. And it is a warning that I'm not the only one. There are many of us who are looking to change either officially our party registration or simply vote Donald Trump in November, as I will.
Yeah, that was on Laura Ingram's show. And one of the things that the Democrats are now saying, because, they've got egg on their face now, right? Her announcement was met with praise from fellow Golden State GOPers and cynicism from regional Democrats who pointed to the fact that Romero already came out as red when she endorsed Republican candidate Larry Elder for governor in 2021. Now, if you don't know who Larry Elder is, he is black and a talk show host, was a talk show host. I don't know if he still does it, but there in California, he's a Republican. And so the Democrats say, we knew then about Gloria what California Republicans know best. The grift is real, the Democrats said. That was Mark Gonzalez, former chair of the LA County Democratic Party. While Republicans are catching up to years-old news, trying to stay relevant, Democrats, they say, have been working to keep them from hurting the same communities that Gloria used to champion. I'm reading all of this and I'm like, yeah, right. The reason why she and other Democrats are leaving the party is because you're not looking out for those communities. And for whatever reason, those communities, they keep reelecting you. At some point, they're going to stop. But over and over again, you see these communities that are living hellscapes. Now, who'd you vote for? I don't know, the Democrat. Really? Because it's the Democrats that have brought us to this hellscape. A lot of people will tell you in a lot of these towns that when they grew up, it was a nice place. But after years of Democrats, it turns into crap. Yet they vote for the same party over and over again. Well, no more, says Gloria Romero. Drexel Hurd, former executive director of the LA County Democratic Party, made a similar observation on X, remarking Republicans are so desperate for any news they have to drudge up old news to stay relevant. I don't know. It seems pretty relevant to me when a member of the Democrat Party and one that has been a member of the Democrat for a long party says see ya. Actually changes her party affiliation. So, of course, what the Democrats are going to do, instead of maybe a little bit of introspection, they decide to do what they do best, which is try and destroy the reputation of their newest enemy. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-90-RED-EYE. This is Gordon in Tennessee. Hey, Gordon, go ahead.
Yeah. Going back a little bit to the metal detectors in schools, why don't they do like they do at sports venues, and instead of these backpacks that you can't even see in, they must have a clear backpack or a clear bag. Do away with these backpacks that you can't even see in so you can actually see what these kids are bringing in.
I think, Gordon, there's some districts that do that. I think, and you're in Tennessee, I think we talked about that in Tennessee at some point. I don't remember where that went, but I know that that's been discussed in at least a few of the states that have been impacted by this. But, Gordon, do you think that, you know, I mean, I hate to play devil's advocate with you, but somebody could very easily keep their gun in their car and just, in fact, that's what this guy did. He left his, I think it was his math class. He left his class and off he went to get his gun. I haven't read where he stored it, if it was in his locker, if it was in his car, but he was able to go and get that firearm and come back and do what he did. But here's what I would also say to you, Gordon, is that every little bit helps. Every little bit helps. And so all of these suggestions that people have had calling in last night and tonight are great ideas. Backpacks that you can see through. You've got, you know, as I keep saying, we want armed teachers, armed SROs as well. You want metal detectors. You have that as well. All of these things would absolutely help the cause, and that is what we need to look at. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. 866-9397. Dan Matt here. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. At a roadside inspection, inspectors may ask to see supporting documents. A supporting document is a document generated or received by a motor carrier in the normal course of business that can be used by law enforcement to verify a driver's logs. These documents can include bills of lading, itineraries, schedules, or equivalent documents that indicate the origin and destination of each trip. They can also include dispatch or trip records, expense receipts related to on-duty/not driving periods, including receipts for meals, lodging, and fuel, electronic mobile communication transmitted through a fleet management system, and payroll records, settlement sheets, or equivalent documents that indicate payment to a driver. Drivers using paper logs must also keep toll receipts. Supporting documents must contain the driver's name, carrier-assigned identification number or vehicle unit number that can be linked to the driver, the date, the name of the nearest city, town, or village, and the time. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, and that's where we find Al calling from St. Louis. Al, how are you?
Great, sir. You're an American patriot, and I listen to you all the time, especially when I watch Kamala and I can't sleep because I'm so mad.
All right, thanks, man.
I just want to say, the Democrats got it down because they're like, look at him, look what they're doing. And they're doing exactly what they're pointing to the other side. You know what I mean? They're like, look. And can you imagine if Donald Trump hadn't won? Could you imagine if we hadn't won the House? Where would we be?
I shudder to think, Alan. By the way,
we wouldn't know anything.
Yeah. By the way, it's called projection.
This is the most important election in America in our lifetime. Please do your homework. This ain't about politics. This is about America.
Well, yeah, it is, and you're right, because if they get in and they legalize all of these illegal aliens, then it's. I mean, I don't want to be a doomsayer, but
I know.
Yeah,
that's why they let them in, boss.
I know.
That's
I was
exactly
there.
why they let them in.
Yeah, been talking about this for the last 3.5 years. We've known their plan for a long time. I played some audio from Chuck Schumer earlier, and he basically admitted it. Oh, by the way, coming up, you want to stay close, Al, because after the bottom of the hour break here, I'm going to play some audio. CNN is stunned that they caught Kamala Harris lying. I love this story. It's one of my favorite stories of the evening. So that story, that audio is coming up. Let's say hello to Jeff in West Virginia. Jeff, thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Dan. It's the subject about the schooling. I'm a 40-year-old truck driver. My son's 4 years old. My wife and I are homeschooling our son because of all this stuff in schools and shootings and things like that. As for college, I want him to go to a trade school. I don't understand why more parents don't focus on trade schools. It's something that the college can't take away from you. And most of the time you're spending all this money on a piece of paper on a subject that's more saturated, like business or something like that. But a trade, that's something that they can never take away from you or that you can build onto.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of trade schools. If you don't mind me asking, Jeff, what is he gonna go do?
I would like for him to do any.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Did you say he's 4?
He's 4 years old. Yes, sir.
Oh, all right, so you may not know yet, but I totally agree with you, though, Jeff. I mean, I'll give you an example. My brother, he went to a trade school, HVAC school. And I didn't come from a rich family, so we couldn't afford college for him or me, quite frankly. And so he ended up going to a trade school, and he learned how to do HVAC. My mom and dad spent a couple $1,000s on the trade school. He is now making 6 figures doing what he does, and he came out. He didn't have any college debt, and he's doing great. Thanks for calling.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. All right, so I love this story. And the reason why I love this story is because we all know, like if you are, even if you're a Democrat, if you pay attention to Kamala Harris, and you've paid attention for the last 3 years, you know that they have not been honest about what's happening on the southern border. I don't need to regurgitate that all over again. So imagine everyone's surprise when Kamala Harris came out, and it was like, flip-flopping Kamala Harris, where suddenly she seemed to be pro-border security. I know, right? It didn't make any sense. CNN actually picked up on that, and so they started paying close attention, and they did some research, and they went back, and they looked at the things that Kamala Harris has tweeted out. They looked at the things that she has said about border security or insecurity, and one of the things that they noticed, and it was like this this big shock, this big surprise that Kamala Harris was actually lying about how she feels about the border.
Tonight, K-File investigates. In a new report, you'll see first out front. The K-File team scoured Kamala Harris's tweets and statements going all the way back to 2017. And what they found was more than 50 instances of Harris slamming Trump's border wall. But now, new Harris campaign ads actually showcase that very wall.
As a border state prosecutor, she took on drug cartels and jailed gang members for smuggling weapons and drugs across the border.
Right. So she's trying to, as you know, because illegal immigration, you ask the American people, and by and large, that in the economy, the two biggest advantages that Donald Trump has from a policy standpoint. Kamala Harris knows that. And so suddenly she becomes pro-border security. Now, I think that most rational people understand that she has been the border czar and the border has been wide open. But here's the thing. Sadly, as we all possibly are going to be doomed by the uninformed in this country come November 5th, what's fascinating is she, even as you probably know, she used a piece of a section of Donald Trump's border wall in her actual commercial. They also looked at all of these tweets that she had sent out over the years, and this is part of what those tweets said.
K-File's Andrew Kaczynski joins me now. So, Andrew, I mean, you all have gone through, scoured an incredible amount of material. Tell me more about what you found.
Yeah, that's right. We found more than 50 of those tweets criticizing the border wall before she used that in her ad. And I want people to take a look at just a few of what she said here. She called it wasteful, useless, a waste of taxpayer money, a vanity wall project, a wasteful border wall, a stupid wall, a medieval vanity project, and an unnecessary wall. And those are really just, there were more. It was just like 10 or like 50.
There's like, I'd be willing to bet that if you went back and you looked at all the speeches that she gave, all the tweets that she sent out, and this guy Kaczynski, he's like, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of statements. They actually also had some live statements of Kamala Harris saying the same thing about Donald Trump's border wall. But then they realized this.
All right, so you go through all of that, you've got all the tweets, and yet all of a sudden in the ads, there's pictures of the wall, and then you went through to look at that wall. Yeah. Like, what is that specific wall that's in her campaign ads now? And you found something very interesting about this specific portion of the wall.
And I think what's also really remarkable about this is, you heard her talking about it there, Trump's wall in his campaign, during his presidency. There was really no greater symbol of Trump's presidency than the wall, in the way that Democrats were attacking him over the wall and his restrictive immigration policies. So we looked in that ad, and if you look at it, that exact area of wall is in Sasabe, Arizona, and that is a portion of wall that was actually built by Donald Trump. It was built in an area where there was not previous wall. It was actually pretty controversial when they were building it at the time. So just to see that, and then there are other.
She's using his wall that he built to say, "Look at what I did." Basically.
And the other images of the wall, we weren't able to pinpoint, but there's telltale signs that was a Trump wall, because there's an anti-climbing plate on top that became popularized during the Trump years.
It is kind of funny because you hear the anchor. I want to say that's Erin Burnett, but I'm not sure. But you hear the anchor, and she's just, she's very skeptical of this ad, as everyone is. But everyone knows that for Harris to use the wall as part of her ad, when in this day and age, there's so many people that can call her out for that, because everybody knows how Biden and Harris felt about Donald Trump's wall. And then all of a sudden, there it is in an ad for Kamala Harris. And, it's not real surprising. She stole no taxes on tips from Donald Trump, and now she's trying to steal his wall. But one of the other things that I find interesting about this story isn't the fact that Kamala Harris lied, because, that's what she does. That's what the Democrats do. That's what Joe Biden has done. But the fact that CNN reported it, does that shock you as well? See, it shocked me. Because one of the things that we noticed as we were watching Joe Biden, the decline of Joe Biden, as we were watching that happen, one of the first things I noticed was you did have CNN you did have the Washington Post and the New York Times and other outlets that did start to call out Joe Biden. And they did start to say, you know what, dude, you've been in power a long time. You were years in the Senate, and now you've been vice president and now president, but it's time to step aside. You finally saw that making its way onto the pages of the Washington Post and the New York Times and CNN from Democrats and not just their Republican commentators. And so I think part of what I find interesting about this story is that CNN is basically calling out Kamala Harris on her hypocrisy. And so I'm wondering, do you think it's possible that the tide is beginning to turn and the media is now starting to look at Kamala Harris as someone who has not been truthful about where she stands, and she will not give interviews? She's not a good candidate, and she's refusing to give access to the media. And I think the media, with stories like this, they are beginning now to push back. And I think that's a good thing, obviously, says the conservative. Because once you start losing the media and they start airing stories like this, where it's like, wow, she really lied, then that might be a wake-up call to Kamala Harris, where it's like, oh, crap, we know that when Joe Biden lost the Washington, never did lose Scarborough until that debate, but whatever. That's when I realized, you know what? Joe may go. And so I'm wondering if the same thing is about to happen to Kamala Harris. Sharon is calling from Washington, D.C., and our great affiliate there, WMAL. Thanks for calling in, Sharon. Go ahead.
A little comment about you saying about your 4-year-old, you don't know what he wants. My son, at the age of 4, after being next to a house fire, said that's what he wanted to be. And when he got out of high school and his first enlistment in the Army, he went and signed up to be a federal firefighter on Andrews Air Force Base. And I'm sitting here looking at the tower now.
Wow, that's amazing.
I'm sitting here helping a trucker out, and I'm waiting for him to help fix his truck so we can get it back on the road.
Oh,
he needs some diesel. He needs a bunch of diesel.
Okay, well, be careful, Sharon. Be careful, and the truck driver too, needing that diesel. So, you know what? What's interesting? That'd be a very good talk radio topic if I wanted to just, go old school. How many of you have actually, when you were 4, 5, 6 years old, what did you want to do when you were that age, and did you actually accomplish what you wanted to do? Sharon's son wanted to be a firefighter at the age of 4. He became a firefighter. I'm sure a lot of people wanted to be, I know when I was a kid, I wanted to be one of two things when I was a kid. I wanted to be a professional baseball player, which I have absolutely no talent whatsoever in baseball. I tried to throw a knuckleball for years, and I just could never figure it out. But at an early age, I wanted to be a major league, I should say, I wanted to be a play-by-play guy for baseball because I know a lot about baseball. I just can't play it. And I wanted desperately to be a play-by-play guy, a color commentator, that kind of thing. And I came close in the sense that I learned radio and I eventually became the talk show host that you're hearing now. So I kind of came close to what I wanted to be when I was a little kid because I had a fascination and a love for people on the radio. Not talk radio, but for people on the radio. I was fascinated by radio. And I knew that I wanted to do something where you would talk into a microphone and your voice comes out of a little box on the other side. I was fascinated by that. I was one of those kids that would, at the very young age of, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, I was one of those kids, and a lot of you people, especially in California, I would listen to the Dodgers games on the radio, and a little transistor radio. I can see it now. And I would listen, to one of the greatest play-by-play guys ever, Vin Scully, who just died a couple of years ago. And I would fall asleep listening to those Dodger games all the way up into junior high. And then I kind of fell out of sports. But I always had that fascination. And so I'm close to what I wanted to be when I was a kid. Obviously not quite there because I don't do sports. But I wonder how many of you had a dream when you were the age of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and you actually grew up and you became what you wanted to be as a little kid. Let's say hello to Nathan. He is calling from Arizona. Nathan, go ahead.
Good evening. I wanted to make a comment about the Joe Biden and Hunter Biden topic, and
Okay.
I was wondering if is there any chance, because it seemed like Joe Biden didn't want to throw in the towel and move it out of the way. Is there any chance that they might have pressured him to resign and telling him that they're going to invoke the 25th Amendment if he didn't resign, and that he wouldn't have a chance to pardon his son down the road if they threw him out of office?
Wow, so you're taking it a step further. So number one, I believe with all my heart that Nancy Pelosi forced Joe Biden out. I mean, that is clearly what happened. But you're taking it a step further, and you're saying, okay, so he agreed to step down so they wouldn't 25th Amendment him out, so that he knew that if they did that, he would not be able to pardon Hunter Biden. That's what you're saying. You know what, Nathan?
Yeah.
I think that actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's all kinds of subterfuge that happens in Washington, D.C., so that would not surprise me in any way, shape, or form.
I need to make another comment if I can.
Yep, go.
I don't believe Hunter Biden will spend a day in jail, period, because he will get pardoned by his father. His father has nothing to lose. He has been pretty much a non-functional president up to this point in time. He's not going to have a legacy, so he will go ahead and do that. On top of that is the topic about the person that engaged in these murders and his father and all that. You know what? The government can't really do anything these days because there's too much gridlock and too many difference of opinions. It comes down to the lost soul that committed that act.
Yeah.
And I think that this government just needs to get harder on these people that commit these acts. And I don't care if they're 14 years old. They took lives and they ruined a whole bunch of other lives. Speedy trial and give them the death penalty, period.
You know what? I don't know. I don't know, Nathan. I appreciate the call. I don't know what. I don't know if Georgia has the death penalty, but you're absolutely right. And Nathan is spot on. I mean, they're going to charge him. He's 14 years old. They're going to charge him as an adult. And to me, he admitted that he did it. Let's have a fast trial and get on with it. 866-90 Red Eye. We'll return next.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
$866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-90 Red Eye. The troubling history of Colt Gray and his family has been revealed. Of course, we've been telling you that his father has been arrested and charged with second-degree murder. His father, in case you missed the news, just a couple of months after the FBI said, keep the guns away from your son, Colt Gray's father bought him a rifle, the same one that was used in the horrific shooting. So I've got details on that and a whole lot more straight ahead. This is Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.